iPhone?
I do.
Yeah, what do you have? Like,
We are now live streaming. Everything you say to do is recorded.
things in there and I can't figure I got some things on the settings, buttons, everything's not perfect. Very close, volume up and down. Please go to silence, I think. Yeah.
So what's the fonts?
16.
Good.
Surviving this winter?
It's a little tonight.
It's a tough one this year. Just won't give up.
The ice is the worst.
I mean, what do you do for the ice to be bad when you have the isolation?
Right.
Perfect storm.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah, should change motor vehicle, whatever, social security.
That was actually really easy.
You just want, yeah, once you do this.
No. That might be a little slow.
Yeah, it's new, right? We talked about this last month, that's the new clock?
Yeah. Well, the hour's right.
Yeah. I think it's more right than it was.
Yeah. Good.
I'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask you to please first stand and face the flag, Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, thank you, and welcome to the February Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for the town of Lancaster. Ms. Terranova, would you please take roll call?
Mr. Hain.
Here.
Mr. Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Michaely.
Here.
Mr. Storr. Mr. Tillmans.
Here.
Mr. Zelik.
Here.
Ms. Monticelli.
We have 3 items on the agenda tonight that will be heard in the following order. 5839 Genesee Street first, followed by 2 Jonquil Court, and then 2 Benzel Court. Ms. Terranova, would you please read the legal notice for 5839 Genesee Street?
First case considered by the Zoning Board of Appeals is that of the petition of Andrew Schaub, 6859 Amanda Lane, Lankport, New York, for 1 variance for the purpose of modifying an existing ground sign to include a message board on premises owned by Herb Schaub at 5839 Genesee Street, Lancaster, New York, to wit, a variance from the requirements of Chapter 400 zoning Section 30, subsection F2C2A of the Code of the Town of Lancaster. The request calls for the installation of a 7-foot tall ground sign. Chapter 400 zoning Section 30, subsection F2C2A of the Code of the Town of Lancaster requires no ground sign shall be higher than 4 feet above the average finished grade. The petitioner therefore requests a 3-foot variance.
Thank you.
I'm Andrew Schaub. I'm one of the petitioners, or I am the petitioner. Do I need to state my address? Okay.
Pardon me?
Do I need to state my address? No. The ground sign that we have on the existing property, we're going to be building that taller is all we're doing. So we have already a 8-foot by 4-foot tall ground sign that just has our name on it. I'm currently have a permit for a temporary sign that's an 8-foot wide message board. It's the vinyl letters that you stick in there, and you can move them however you want, make them say whatever you want. But you got to physically move them. It's not a visual like a LED board or something. So we're just looking to basically incorporate that into the sign, make it permanent, raise the sign up a little bit. So the 4-foot limitation there on ground signs is what I'm looking for a variance from. So we're going to move that to 7 feet is what I'm requesting.
Okay, great. We'll now go to the board and see if there are any questions. Mr. Hain, you want to start? Any questions?
Yeah, can you describe what the new sign is going to look like? Is it electronic, light, LED?
No, so the current sign is illuminated from the top down with some LED lights, very low power, just to be able to just see it at night. The same will go for the lower section as well. So it'll just be illuminated straight down. There won't be any LED, digital, blinking.
Scrolling screens of
No,
some sort? Okay,
nope,
all right.
Nope, that's
Very good.
not our plan. Nope. So,
I have no more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Matthew, any questions?
Sure, just a simple question. So why do you guys want it to be taller?
it just needs more space. The current sign being 3 foot by 8 foot with our logo on it is, 25 feet from the road, and driving by, it's hard to read, right? That distance. So, if I was to compress that down and keep our logo there and not raise it up and make more room for more signage, I wouldn't be able to do this. So one of the things that we've realized being in business for the past 2.5 years is that, Genesee Street has a lot of traffic on it. There's 10,000 some odd cars that go by every day. And a lot of times people come in and they're like, boy, we didn't even know you guys were here. And shocking, right? But we get that a lot.
But I've had to park on Genesee Street to actually.
Well,
there,
so
yes. Yeah, I do find that.
in all fairness, there are a fair amount of people who do know we're there now, and now they don't know that what we offer. So we have cans for sale, we have lunch specials, we have all that stuff, and we're trying to advertise that in the community. It's just a little bit of extra word of mouth advertising, right?
Seems to be very successful.
Thank you.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I right in assuming that you're trying to make it similar to Adam's sign? Adam's sign is higher and has
That's
a message board below it?
Bigger than we're looking for, but yes, it's very similar to that. Yeah, when you look at it, Adams has 2 of those signs. They have a little message center, I'll call it, below the main text of their emblem or their logo. And then there's even a few churches down the road that have similar signs to what we're looking to do. Nothing with LED, flashing, scrolling, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Any, Mr. Tillmans, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no questions.
Mr. Zilak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no questions as well.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments from the audience? Anyone from the audience would like to speak up? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I can make a motion. Whereas the zoning board of appeals of the town of Lancaster has made the following findings: that no undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood by the granting of the area variance relief sought, because the sign is not increasing in overall size or moving closer to becoming a hazard to oncoming traffic, that no that no detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance relief sought, that the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance relief sought, that the requested area variance relief is not substantial, that the proposed area variance relief will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district. The alleged difficulty is self-created, but not to the extent necessary to preclude the granting of the area variance relief sought. That this board has taken into consideration the benefits of the applicants of the variance relief sought is granted as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant. That the intent and purposes of this ordinance, the variance relief sought, if granted, is the minimum variance necessary to afford relief.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Tillman, second by Mr. Zilak. We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hain.
Yes.
Mr. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Michaely.
Yes.
Mr. Tillmans.
Yes.
Passed.
Okay, your variance has been approved. Please just make sure you stop in with the building department before
Yep.
doing any work.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Thank you.
folks.
Have a good night. Okay, Mr. Terranova, can you please read the legal notice for the next case?
Second case considered by the zoning board of appeals is that of the petition of Thomas and Lisa Devens, 2 Jonquil Court, Lancaster, New York, for one variance for the purpose of constructing a privacy fence in a required front yard on premises owned by the petitioners at 2 Jonquil Court, Lancaster, New York, to wit, a variance from the requirements of Chapter 400 zoning Section 34, subsection C of the Code of the Town of Lancaster. The request calls for constructing a 6-foot-tall privacy fence in a required front yard. Chapter 400 zoning Section 34, subsection C of the Code of the Town of Lancaster requires within non-industrial districts no fence or wall other than a necessary retaining wall over 3 feet in height shall extend into the front yard of any lot. The petitioners therefore request a 3-foot variance.
Thank you. And do we have anyone from True Jonquil Court here?
Hi, I'm Lisa Devens. It's my husband Thomas. We're the homeowners at 2 Jonquil.
Okay.
I currently have a 4-foot fence that was identical to my neighbors on the west side, so we put up the same type of fence so that my yard would all be the same. However, we do have a dog that likes to run along that. It's, well, I know you call it a required front yard. It's my backyard that's on the Jonquil, or on the Juniper side. So she will run along there, and we found that people walking their dog will let their dog stick their entire head inside of the fence. Small children, the fence is 4 feet. Adults will reach over the fence trying to pet my dog. We've tried putting that black fabric across it. She'll jump on it and pull it down. The wind has blown holes in it. And it just doesn't look very nice, especially when it gets holes and torn. The other thing that we were requesting was to move it to 3 feet from the sidewalk, which went the last time I came for a variance for the fence, we had asked for 3 feet. I didn't really get a reason why, but they had requested 5 feet. So when we got our no dig line put in, the day of installation when they came to put in the fence, they said, your no dig line is right on the 5 feet. So my options were 3 feet or 7 feet. It was the day of installation, so I didn't really have any option but to go with the 7 feet. So I'm requesting if I could have it back to 3 feet, I would regain like almost 400 square feet of my yard that we would like to have. We did go and look at other homes on Juniper just to see how close they were to the sidewalk. There are 11 fences that we saw, And they're all closer than that 7 feet that I currently have.
Okay. Thank you. And you did provide a letter from the neighbor.
That's my neighbor that's directly behind me. That would be the only neighbor that I have that my fence would be up against his yard.
Yep. And the letter from the neighbor is recommending approval from the neighbor at 410 Seneca Place. Is that it? Good for now?
I think so.
Start with Mr. Matthews. Any questions or comments?
Simple, what kind of dog do you have?
She's a mix,
Okay.
just a rescue. She's only about this. She's like 42 pounds.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Tillmans, any questions?
So you mentioned, so the variance is for the height of the fence, correct?
The height of the fence, and if I could move it back to 3 feet from the sidewalk.
That would be a totally different variance, right? Yeah. So what we'd be voting on today is just the height of the fence?
Not as well as that
Yep.
I'd have to come back for that, or?
It does, I think it does say 3 feet here, doesn't it?
That's the height, that's for the height of the variance.
I had put it in the paperwork too, is the,
So Matt, this variance is for the height. The last variance, I didn't see the minutes from, was there a prior variance?
Perhaps, but I don't think their local zoning restricts the location of the
Right.
fence, a 3-foot fence in the front yard.
Right.
Keep in mind, there is a 20-foot drainage easement as well as a 15-foot, I just had the survey too, a 15-foot sewer easement. And it may be related to the sewer easement. It's a sanitary sewer easement. So I'm not sure what the parameters were with the 7-foot dimension.
So you said there was a no dig, you called
At
811
at 5 feet.
at 5 feet?
The last time that they flagged it, that's what the installation crew had told me.
Right.
That I couldn't go 5, that they wanted to go 2 feet off of that, which made it 3 or 7, and since I didn't have approval for the 5, I figured I had to go 7 since it was the day of.
Would 3, as far as you can tell, Matt, I can't really make it out on the survey here. Would 3 feet be in a,
According to the record of the 2017 permit, it was granted in March of 17, 5 feet from the property line.
5 feet?
For whatever reason, there was a dimensional request there.
They had requested quite a few things of the fence.
Yeah, I don't have the document that shows the findings of that, but as I said before, there really is no restriction in our local law as to where this fence could be in that front yard. It just limits the height.
Okay. Got that? Okay.
Okay. Just wanted to make that clear.
No, good questions, good question. Good for you? Set?
I think that should do it for me, yeah.
Mr. Zilak, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Chair. No, I have no questions.
Mr. Hain?
I have no questions, thank you.
I have no questions either. Does anyone in the audience have anything, questions or comments on this case? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
You can make the motion. Whereas the zoning board of appeals of the town of Lancaster has made the following findings, that this area variance relief for a single-family residence according to part 617.5 C17 of the New York State Codes, Rules, and Regulations is a type 2 action and has been determined not to have a significant impact on the environment. Therefore, it is not subject to a seeker review. That no undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood by granting of the area variance relief sought, as this is a replacement for an existing fence. That no detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance relief sought. That the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance relief sought. That the requested area variance relief is not substantial. That the proposed area variance relief will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. The alleged difficulty is self-created, but not to the extent necessary to preclude the granting of the area variance relief sought. This board has taken into consideration the benefit to the applicants if the variance relief sought is granted as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant. That within the intent and purposes of this ordinance, the variance relief sought, if granted, is the minimum variance necessary to afford relief. That such fence will not unduly shut out light or air to adjoining properties. That such fence will not create a fire hazard by reason of its construction or location.
Thank you. Do we have a second? I'll second. Motion by Tillman, Mr. Tillman, second by me. Will the roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hain.
Yes?
Mr. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Michaely.
Yes.
Mr. Tillmans.
Yes.
Mr. Zelik.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. So it's been approved, but make sure you stop in at the building department before doing any work.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Turnover, can you please read the legal notice for 2 Benzel Court?
The third case considered by the Zoning Board of Appeals is that of the petition of Anthony Pandolfi, United Rentals, 80 Silo City Row, Suite 100, Buffalo, New York, for one variance for the purpose of a site plan review for outdoor storage of items on premises owned by SCIP 17 LLC, Kara Blake, Reyna, at 2 Benzel Court, Lancaster, New York, to wit. A variance from the requirements of Chapter 400, zoning section 22, subsection B of the Code of the Town of Lancaster. The request calls for a site plan review for outdoor storage of items at 30 feet tall. Chapter 400, zoning section 22, subsection B of the Code of the Town of Lancaster states that outdoor storage is prohibited in the front yard or in any yard abutting a residential district. Outdoor storage is permitted in the side and rear yards if the storage area is screened from adjacent parcels, does not exceed 16 feet in height, and is not closer than 50 feet from any property line. The petitioner therefore requests a 14-foot variance.
Thank you.
Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Anthony Pandolfi with Carmina Wood Design at 80 Silo City Row, Buffalo, New York, 14203. Here on behalf of our client, United Rentals, that operates out of 2 Benzel Court. Just real quickly, I just want to pass out a supplemental material. This is just our site plan overlaid on an aerial photo, which I'll give to you in a minute. Thank you.
Can I have a look, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So we're here tonight to request a variance, as mentioned, for stacking height of outdoor storage. What we're proposing is a stone and gravel lot to store empty, unrented storage containers that United Rentals uses to rent out for their business. Just a quick layout of the property. This is the existing building on site on the north side of the property. They have some blacktop parking here. So we are proposing to put a gravel lot to the south here where they would store those unrented containers. Because of the size of the development, we are proposing a stormwater management system as well as fire retention areas to address stormwater quality as well as stormwater quantity. This has been in front of the planning board. They did recommend a negative declaration pursuant to seeker. That was passed by the town board. I believe it was at their meeting last week. We did submit a special use permit, which is required for outdoor storage. That is scheduled on the town board meeting later this month to schedule a public hearing for March. Ed Schiller, town engineer, did review our stormwater management design, and that was approved by him. So lastly, we're just here to seek the variance for the height of the storage before we can go back to planning board for final site plan approval. Just what the storage containers are used for, in case anyone's curious. They're mostly rented out to construction job sites for the contractors to store materials and equipment inside the containers, either to protect them from the weather or vandalism, theft, things of that nature. Once they're done, they're returned. So everything stored on this site is empty. Just wanted to let that be known. As far as screening goes, we are proposing some evergreen screening along the western property line as well as the eastern property line. To the east is the Walden driving range. Even further east of that is Orville's. To the south is the railroad tracks. To the east is Cemetery Road. If you guys are familiar with that part of Cemetery Road, that's where it rises up very quickly, which kind of creates a natural screening barrier to the other side of Cemetery Road. But the reason I passed out the aerial overlay is you can see on all three sides of this development, it's pretty open. There's really no residential or anything like that that's gonna, be affected by this too much. And then to the north, it's screened by the existing building. There's an industrial strip here as well, but then also some dense vegetation screening from Walden Avenue. That's really all I have, but if there's any questions or comments, I can address them.
Could you describe the screening a little bit, and which sides is it going to be on? You said the,
Along the western property line here, and then along the eastern property line here, along Benzel Court.
so what's the screening going to consist of?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's gonna be, we're proposing Norway spruce evergreen trees. We have 18 along the west and 11 along the east.
Okay. Questions from the board? Mr. Tillman, do you want to start?
So the height, how tall is a container?
So each container is about 9.5 feet tall. So what they would like to do is be able to stack them 3 containers high. And I also want to point out, the containers will be stored there when they're unrented. So it's not like they're going to have this lot filled up every day of the year. When they need to store them, they'll be there. If they're rented out, they won't be there. So yeah, just want to mention that as well.
So like max height, you're looking 27, 28?
Yeah, 9.5 will give you 28.5, but 30 just, little wiggle room.
Okay. I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Zilak?
Thank you. Is there any potential for future building on that gravel area?
No, the only plan right now is only to store the containers.
You know how many containers they planning storing there? What's their target?
It all depends on, what they have to store. The way it was conveyed to me is they're very desperate for places to store these containers, so they're in desperate need of somewhere to put them. But as I mentioned, it's going to be a fluctuating amount of whether or not they're there, how many are there.
I know you don't work for United, but do you think it's going to be full? That whole site will be full, 3 high? I understand.
I wouldn't expect it to be full 3 high. I think the reason for wanting to stack 3 high is they're easier to access if you can stack them up before you start moving further south, where you can bring the crane in, grab them here, rather than having to go all the way down. But they would like it there in case they do need it. But I wouldn't expect it to be full 3 high, though.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
In regards to the trees that they're planting here, so we're talking about 27 feet high and potentially, but we're talking about 5 feet or less than 5 foot trees?
At planting height, yes, that's how they come. But if, they do still provide screening, should they only be 1 high or even 2 high once they start to mature.
Fair enough. All right, I have no other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
So, Matt, the only variance that's necessary is for the height of the storage.
That's correct.
Because it doesn't abut a residential lot, side yard storage is acceptable, correct? Am I right?
They've met the minimums of the.
Met everything,
Right.
okay. I would only say my thoughts on it are that it's kind of asking a lot. If this was on, say Walden Avenue or Genesee Street or pavement or cemetery, and also the fact that they want to bring it up to the street or close to the street, but that doesn't require another variance? Not closer than 50 feet from any property lines. So if they put it at the street or 5 feet from the street, they don't need a variance for that?
They would, because it would be considered a front yard.
Okay.
Front yard setback, they've exceeded that setback requirement.
So if they were on, say, Walden Avenue, and if it was zoned the same, would they be able, they wouldn't be able to do outdoor storage that close to the street, would they?
Outdoor storage is permitted in a front, or I'm sorry, in a side and a rear yard with the screening requirements.
With the screening
Right,
requirements?
and again, the front yard is specifically measured through the setback distance.
Okay. So to me, what I was getting at is that this, to me, is a little different, that if this was on a main drag, I think I'd have some issue with it. This is a dead-end street. And it is, the only place it's visible from seems to be from the overpass, from the bridge. So
Right.
I think that is a little different. I have no other questions or comments, if there's nothing else on the board. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak about this? Yes, sir. Come on up, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Randall Meidenbauer. I'm at 55 Hemlock in Lancaster, 14086. I own the property in front with the current 18,000 square foot building. And every time I go by there, I see those containers. And they're stacked up. Is that where you're going to keep them, just there? You're not going to extend the gravel?
It would be in this area.
You're going to put it back there, so you got to
Yeah.
bulldoze all that?
Yeah, they're gonna clear all that and put down gravel.
Well, the other thing I was concerned about is, I know I got nothing against United Rentals, but I got all those porta potties stacked in there. I don't mind putting stuff around here, but can't they block off my property too? I mean, it's quite an eyesore. I mean,
Sure.
everybody knows we got to go to the bathroom, but do I have to see it every day?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's my point.
So, where would the screening, would the screening go along on the east side? Would it go along the entire property?
No, the east side is at.
Right here. Right here.
So along-
This
along-
property is a concrete, there used to be a building here that was burned. So they storm here, which is, I really have nothing against that. But you can see it right from my place in here, and my building is here. So I'd like something, I'd like the board to require it. I don't know if I got to go to the planning board, which I guess they still have to do. I'd like to get notice on that.
Yeah.
But I'd like something along in here to block this off, and here's where they dump all the solid waste. Just something to block that off. The aesthetics of it are not that good.
So the rear of your building, you look at Fort.
If you're at Walden Avenue, Benzel Court, Cemetery is there, my building's on the west side. But then there's 4 acres that go to Benzel. Right behind that is where the old building was that burned. They've got all their porta potties there.
I know, yeah.
And I'm just saying, I would like the board, or whoever, the planning board, to require some kind of blockage there too.
This is your building right here.
Yes. So, it's just, as I said, aesthetically, it doesn't look that good.
So, Matt, am I correct in saying that by code, the current storage of the porta potties, that is permissible? Right?
It is permitted. The whole point that we're even here reviewing a site plan amendment is because of the increased activity that was noticed on that property.
Yeah.
We've had some discussions with the ownership on what they need to do. Should they continue to use that land in that fashion? And this is the result of that. So they've decided to redesign a portion of the lot to accommodate those storage units because right now they're in a space that should be vegetated, right? I don't think they were ever intended to be stored where they are right now, but that's where they are. That's where they have the room. The porta potties, they're on a concrete surface, and again, that's just for storage. We've been having some discussion with the ownership about how they're cleaning them out, how they're being stored on site, and what the effects that they're having on the drainage system.
Okay.
So we're working with them on that. So the way the code is specific is, again, it's permissible in the rear and the side yards with screening. not permitted in a front yard. With this specific lot, it's gonna be that first 50 feet parallel to Benzel Court, the whole east property line. That's considered their front yard.
I'm sorry, so that last part again, but there's the first 50 feet?
The first 50 feet from Benzel Court is considered a front yard.
Right.
They're avoiding that. They're not storing anything in there.
By putting it in the back, moving it towards the
Well,
tracks.
Where it is, it's outside of the front yard. You're able to verify that.
So with your building, this is your building, you don't look, thank you. You look at the back of their building, the porta potties are over here, correct?
Yeah, but when you come in here, I mean, you can
And you
still
own
see
it?
it.
You own this as well?
Yeah, I own the corner, it's 6 acres.
Okay.
The building's on 2 acres, I mean, it's never been separated. I mean, I have no objection to them using this, that's not my point. I just was wondering if there's some kind of way to block that, put trees like you're gonna do on the side, put them in front there, just to aesthetically. And the other, Mr. Fishion raises a good point too. What about the truck traffic? I don't think that, it's not that big of a turn here, but there's a lot of traffic on Cemetery. And the truck traffic, I mean, I don't know how often they're gonna be, transitioned out. I just don't know that. You probably don't either.
Not exactly.
So, I mean, I don't think there's anything we can do about that, except maybe make it a bigger turn or something. But I think I think really, now that I made an objection, I'd like to go to the planning board. I'd like to be on notice to go to the planning board.
Sure.
And I'll work with them to see if we can come up with some
And-
satisfactory
So
conclusion.
what's the schedule for the planning board? Is this going,
I will make sure that the secretary notifies him.
okay, you can do that.
It's the
Thank you.
first and third Wednesday of each month. I'm not sure what docket we're gonna be placed on.
I already spoke to, I'm sorry, what's her name, Cindy?
Oh,
I spoke to Cindy this week, and asked her to put us on next week tentatively,
Okay.
pending what happens here. So tentatively, we are scheduled to be on next Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
Unfortunately, I gotta be out of town. I just did that to follow you up, right?
You can write a letter to.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't be
Planning
opposed to
board.
correspondence going to the planning board
Sure.
with you, and I will talk to the owner to see how they feel about it.
Again, I'm not opposed to the development. I'm not at all, but
How do we define screening?
Planning board will tell you that.
It's in our code, and the planning board then interprets it as how they plan it, whether it's a fence or trees. What would you think, Mr. Badalfi, about screening on the north side instead of the east side? My thought is the east side screening.
You're thinking the east side doesn't really need it because of the way cemetery.
Yeah, it goes up real heavy.
I think it's kind of a waste, because
So we wouldn't even really be adding trees, so I can talk to our client about that, to make the neighbor happy, and you're not adding more trees than what we already were showing.
and
I think-
it would only be necessary, if I'm correct, Mr. Meidenbauer, from the area, from this building
yes, the existing building. That's a
over here.
concrete thing with
I don't-
everything stored there.
Does anyone, I mean, that's just my thought. The trees on the east side,
they
by
don't
the
do
dead end
much.
street, are waste.
so high. Trees
Yeah.
on the east side would be 5 foot
Exactly.
tall.
I mean,
That hill's
it's only
45
probably
feet
half-
tall.
And it's
Right.
probably only half of
Yeah.
it.
The trees almost serve no purpose compared to the rise of the road.
Yeah, the embankment there.
Correct, but when it comes to hiding porta potties behind them, it does. You're exactly right, but the trees, if there's trees there, and his only objection is that he doesn't want to look at the porta potties.
Well, you don't want to see them from the front, but once you come up Cemetery Road, you're going to see that
Absolutely,
entire lay of land.
100%, but not from his rear property.
Yeah.
We can
Correct.
make it-
Yeah.
Correct, so I think that's a good,
That's
a good
my only
compromise.
thinking. And then I thought about, I don't know what kind of truck traffic go there, but we'll have to.
I don't think that should be too much of an issue. I'll talk with client, really more of a site plan issue,
This-
but I think I don't.
Sounds like they're already storing these containers there, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
they're
Rockford.
double- so they're double- right now-
So they're going to move into a place where it's permissible. Now,
Yeah.
the only question is, are they planning on storing more there than before? And would that increase traffic?
Yeah,
Yeah, that goes to the road entrance too, because the light is not that far away.
Right.
I just don't know. I
think
just don't know.
that's where Matt's office would get involved and they'll tell
Mm-hmm.
them, hey, you got a proper space to store them, you gotta keep them there. We'll make them aware of that, yeah.
Because it's my understanding that the state DOT is not allowing any more access from my property
where the building is to the corner for road entrance because it's too close to the signal.
Right.
So to get to this property, unless I go through here, and I may sell this someday, just the building on the 2 acres, to get to the 4 acres on the corner, you may need to come off a cemetery, off Benzel there.
Yeah, you'll
And
have the
so-
same issue, more so, because you have a 5-acre piece of property. You're gonna build something that's probably gonna be more truck intensive than what they're doing down here.
Who knows? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that the planning board will have to at that time.
Yeah, I just like to get it on the record, talk about it, and see what we can come up with. That's my own ejection
So
tonight.
what if we had a condition that there was screening, if everyone else feels good about this, screening on the north side and the west side? And we all agree that the screening on the east side is kind of a waste, because, can we make that as a condition?
I feel like that's more of a site plan issue.
Yeah.
You're here to consider the storage height of that stock
Yeah,
area. That's what we're here to consider.
we can't
And
put
if I can
conditions on, we've
just
done-
make a couple of points of clarification. These are items that are planning board recommendations. It's really up to the planning board to make those
Okay.
determinations.
Yep, I hear you.
And I'll clarify as well, our landscape plan, as far as the minimum height of the newly planted trees, it's a 6 to 8 foot tall tree that's identified on the plans minimally. And the screening requirement is from the side and the rear yards only. That's what the code requires. And again, it's a planning issue. I encourage anybody and everybody that has comment on this thing to either get it in writing or present those concerns to the planning board. That's where that needs to be addressed.
I'll do that.
Wouldn't the north side be the side yard?
It is.
Okay, all right. So it wouldn't be necessary on the Benzel side anyway?
It's somewhat required. By our local law, it requires screening on the side yards.
Side yards, not the front yard? Not the front?
Benzel is a front yard.
Right. Okay, well, this is the planning board, so this is the planning, so you see what we're saying, our hands
Yeah,
tied
yeah,
with
no,
that.
I get it. I get it.
Okay,
I'll submit something in writing to,
thank you, and if you would leave, Diane, do you have Mr. Meinbauer's contact info? If you would leave it with us.
I'll make sure you
we'll
get
make
Okay,
sure.
I mean, you can, anything that you write to the planning board, you could drop off at the town clerk's office, and we will make sure they get it.
okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Mister, please give us your name and address.
Ed Brodzik. There's 4 of us that own the property, the Walden Golf Range adjacent. I talked with Matt this morning. He explained a number of the issues is in regard especially to the drainage and also the location of the containers and that they're stackable. The biggest things with what I'm hearing him mention right now is trees that are 5 foot tall. Keep in mind that there's a golf range next door. There might be the occasional ball that goes across. We're not against the variance. The biggest thing is if, rather than trees, having some other type of barrier, a fencing of some type.
Okay. So I think that goes back to what we were just saying, and I hear you. I think, I don't disagree, that it'd be more so a planning board issue because they've been discussing the screening. So the planning board meeting is going to be, when did we say? Next
Yeah,
Wednesday?
I'm not going to be here.
The 20th.
You could, though, it may be a good idea to, as Mr. Terranova just said, to send an email, a letter, whatever it is, that you can communicate with them beforehand to tell what
Okay.
your objections would be, what your concerns would be. Because
We're not concerned about the variance change, but with the abutting property lines.
Yeah.
Regarding flooding, which talked with Mr. Fajone this morning, it sounds like that's addressed. And what it's going to look like, and also how much traffic's going to be there. And just with what this gentleman said, it doesn't sound like it's really defined with whether things may possibly change, where that can become an issue.
changing what way? What do you mean?
That there's more traffic involved on the property.
Sure. And I think it's impossible for us to say, and you gotta figure that it's a piece of industrial property, so any building that goes there is gonna have some truck traffic. We don't know, I mean, we don't know how often they'll be getting drop-offs, if it's once a day, once a week, or 5
Right.
times a day. If that, the traffic issues also would go back to the planning board, that's something to, I think you could address with them.
Okay, but if we just make a note that we would suggest more of a 5-foot tree is going to take however number of years to grow.
Yeah, yeah.
And it, to me, it-
And the crazy thing is, the 30-foot fence, is out of the question, is, 30, so it's, these things are gonna be 30 feet high, and there's no screening that can protect that, unless there was a 30-foot fence, and then nobody wants that.
Are the trees, is the
So-
screens on a berm? I'd see your cross-section is flat, but is there a berm, a planned berm for it, or no?
No, there's
So
not.
it's at grade?
That, the whole property drains from north to south, so making a berm kind of hard on that kind of drainage pattern.
So it may be a good idea for you to send in a letter or an email to, that can be sent, if you can't go to the planning board meeting, that
okay.
they'll see, so they can see your concerns.
The other thing, if this is approved, do you know when you expect to start construction?
Probably late spring. Should we get our final approvals in March, we would probably, they would probably start May, April, May.
Okay, and then
As soon
be
as
in
they can.
operation,
They're desperate to get stuff.
and when they would start operating, are they planning for 2025 or?
Yeah, well, I mean, well, they're currently operating there, so they would,
Right.
yeah, they would start using it right away.
And the only real construction is putting gravel on the,
Yeah, and the
South side?
installation of the stormwater management, yeah.
okay.
No, I talked with Mr. Fischon this morning. He mentioned with that retention area in between the two property lines, that we've always had an issue of water working its way onto our property, which causes mowing issues and retrieving of balls. Matt mentioned that will spill out into a natural drainage in the back, which is good.
So it should be better.
Yeah,
It should help with
Yeah.
the drainage.
yeah. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, hearing any other questions from the board? Do we have a motion? I'll make the motion. Whereas the zoning board of appeals of the town of Lancaster has made the following findings, that no undesirable change will be provided in the character of the neighborhood by the granting of the area variance relief sought, that no detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance relief sought, that the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance relief sought, that the requested area variance relief is not substantial, that the proposed area variance relief will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, that the alleged difficulty is self-created but not to the extent necessary to preclude the granting of the area variance relief sought, that this board has taken into consideration the benefit to the applicants if the variance relief sought is granted as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant, that within the intent and purposes of this ordinance, the variance relief sought, if granted, is the minimum variance necessary to afford relief. And that's it. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by me, second by Mr. Tillmans. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hain.
Yes.
Mr. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Michaely.
Yes.
Mr. Tillmans.
Yes.
Mr. Zelak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Before we adjourn? Matt, any thoughts? Diane? Motion to adjourn? Yes. So moved, second?
Just to understand, there's no contingency related to the various approved